You say you're free. You say you make your own choices. But every decision you make is filtered through the eyes of people you don't even respect. You hate the world you serve, but you still serve it. You call it ambition. It's compliance. You're on vacation. You worked for it, paid for it, dreamed of it. But on day 3, you're in a hotel bathroom, hunched over your phone, replying to emails with fake urgency. Not because you care, but because you're afraid they'll forget you if you don't. You scroll LinkedIn for no reason. You send a Slack message to look engaged. Your family is at the beach. You're sitting on a cold toilet lid pretending your battery is low. The only thing that's low is your autonomy. That isn't strategy. That's submission. That's the mind of a man trained to feel shame for resting. A man who mistakes being noticed for being respected. A man who has no inner compass, just a radar for approval signals. The system didn't need to enslave you. It just had to convince you that obedience is success. That urgency equals importance. That being busy means you matter. And once you believe that, you became predictable. The machine doesn't care if you burn out. It only cares that you don't stop. Here's the code. From childhood, you were rewarded for performance. Not curiosity, not self-knowledge. Just output. Grades, smiles, trophies, claps. You became a projection, shaped by external validation. And now you're 35, nodding in Zoom calls you hate, pretending to be grateful while suppressing the screen. Second example. You're at a dinner. The food is good. The company is fake. You laugh on cue. You talk about the market. You nod when someone says something that makes your skin crawl. Not because you agree, but because you think that smile might buy you a favor later. You leave with a full stomach and an emptier soul. Third example. You post a photo of your car. The caption is self-deprecating, like you're joking. But you're not. You want someone, anyone, to think you're doing well. You don't care about the car. You care about how it looks from the outside. And the truth is, no one really looked. But the algorithm did. And it rewarded you. That is the machine. It feeds on your insecurity. It monetizes your need to be seen. It weaponizes comparison. And you call it networking. You call it drive. You call it playing the game. But the game is playing you. This isn't about ambition. It's about identity theft. You gave away your choices for likes, nods, claps, promotions. You gave away your edge to become digestible. Now you're wondering why you feel hollow. Why you fantasize about disappearing. Why every achievement feels like a delay, not a reward. You were not designed to be free. You were trained to be functional, to be acceptable, to be liked. You were taught that success means becoming what others want, even if it kills you. So now what? You can't say you didn't know. You think you've matured, but you've just learned how to disappear quietly. You call it professionalism. You call it patience. You say things like, it's just part of being a man. But what you actually mean is, I've learned to shrink myself to stay employed. You stopped speaking your mind not because you grew wise, but because you learned the price of honesty. You wear silence like a uniform. You wear obedience like a badge. And you've convinced yourself that this is what strength looks like. You're in a meeting. Someone less competent, less experienced, less honest talks over you. You nod. You smile. You even say, good point. Because you've learned that power doesn't belong to the most capable. It belongs to the most comfortable. And you don't make them comfortable. So you play small, stay nice, and hope they remember you exist when the promotions are handed out. That's not maturity. That's learned helplessness. Another moment. It's 9:27 p.m. You're in the kitchen with your laptop. Everyone else in your house is asleep. You're replying to a message that didn't need a reply. You're revising a report that no one asked for. You don't care about the outcome. You just need them to see your name in the thread. You want someone to notice that you're still working, that you're still trying, that you still matter. You tell yourself you're building a future. But deep down, you know the truth. You're just afraid of being forgotten. You didn't used to be like this. You used to fight for things. You used to get angry. Now you practice being easy to work with. You tolerate people who disgust you. You make small talk with men who would never defend you. You shake hands with liars. You congratulate people you don't respect. And you've told yourself this is what being strategic looks like. But it's not strategy. It's surrender. You've been living by a belief that says, if I'm useful enough, quiet enough, agreeable enough, they'll keep me. You don't even know who they are anymore. But you keep chasing their approval. You wake up already behind. You dress to be ignored. You speak just enough to be safe. You don't laugh too loud. You don't challenge bad ideas. You don't draw attention unless it's controlled. And when you feel resentment, you call it stress. When you feel dead inside, you call it fatigue. When you feel rage, you call it pressure. You've renamed every warning sign so it fits inside a calendar. They gave you just enough. A decent title, a number on a paycheck, a hollow compliment at the end of the quarter. And that was enough to keep you quiet. Not fulfilled, just manageable. You get your tiny reward, and you tell yourself it was worth it. But it never is. It never was. The reward isn't growth. It's sedation. This isn't work ethic. It's erasure. Somewhere along the way, your edge became a liability. So you filed it down. You became reliable. You became stable. You became good to have around. You became the man who cleans up messes, who doesn't make noise, who doesn't ask for more, just silently holds the weight no one else wants. And now they don't even see you. They see your output. They see your hours. They see your willingness to bend. But they don't see you. This belief, this hidden contract, was never about maturity. It was about compliance. You were taught that if you shape yourself into something tolerable, the world would repay you with purpose. But it never did. It only repaid you with repetition. You weren't building something. You were being used. And the worst part is, you knew. He sits in a room with people he doesn't respect. They talk over him. One of them makes a joke at his expense. It's not funny. He smiles anyway. He nods as if he agrees. His hands stay still. His eyes don't move. The moment passes and he lets it. Because drawing attention to it would be worse than being humiliated. This is not restraint. It's rehearsal. He didn't decide to become like this. He adapted. Slowly. Quietly. Every year, a little less reaction. A little more caution. He used to push back. Now he pauses. He used to speak with conviction. Now he checks the room first. No one asked him to shrink. They just stopped rewarding him when he didn't. He adjusts his tone to match the others. He lowers his voice on certain words. He avoids topics. He phrases things as questions instead of statements. He rehearses small talk in the elevator. Not because he wants to, but because he's learned it makes people feel comfortable. He calls this maturity. It's not. It's the death of friction. The obedient lose the ability to see what they've lost. Carl Jung. He doesn't argue anymore. Not because he's reached peace, but because conflict feels like risk. He doesn't express desire. Not because he's ascetic, but because wanting something means having to defend it. He doesn't draw lines. Because lines get tested. And he's tired. He built his life to be manageable. He became someone no one would fear, no one would challenge, no one would reject. He tells himself this is discipline. But it's just delay. A lifetime of deferred expression. He doesn't make choices. He avoids consequences. He doesn't feel proud. He feels inoffensive. He's the kind of man people like to work with. The kind who doesn't make things harder. The kind who's always good under pressure. The kind who's described as steady, responsible, level-headed. What they mean is predictable. He's never the one who takes the room in a new direction. He's the one who holds it together when it collapses. He used to wonder what he was meant to do. Now he just wants to get through the week without making anything worse. He doesn't dream. He calculates. He doesn't leap. He plans. Every risk is run through the algorithm of how it will look, how it might be judged, how it might backfire. He's not cautious. He's domesticated. There's nothing wrong with him. That's the point. He performs exactly as required. He gets the evaluations. He receives the thanks for being a team player. He's rewarded for being reliable. Not real, just reliable. At some point, he stopped being a man with a will. He became a function. He doesn't remember when it happened. Only that now, it feels normal. To agree quickly. To apologize when it's not his fault. To stay late without being asked. To say, I'm fine, when he hasn't been for years. He tells himself this is emotional control. But it's not control. It's vacancy. The people around him think he's calm. What they don't realize is that there's nothing left to disturb. He doesn't explode. He erodes. Slowly. Without sound. Without protest. He doesn't feel anger anymore. Just resistance. Like the body of someone who flinches before being touched. When he speaks, it's curated. When he smiles, it's controlled. When he rests, it's timed. His entire life is a performance of stability. But beneath the surface, there's nothing holding it up. Just habit. Just memory. Just a man who got very good at disappearing without leaving. No collapse. No noise. Just cost. He doesn't explain. He doesn't argue. He closes the laptop mid-meeting, stands, and leaves. Not because he's emotional, but because he finally sees the exchange for what it is. He gave clarity. They wanted submission. He gave solutions. They wanted obedience. There's nothing left to prove. No reason to perform. The conversation is over, even if they're still talking. This is not rebellion. This is recognition. He walks out not because he's fed up, but because he no longer plays games he doesn't respect. This is the moment no one sees coming. Not the burnout. Not the breakdown. The cut. The silent, final cut from a man who no longer needs to be understood. Who no longer fears being misunderstood. Who has stopped trading his presence for approval. Schopenhauer said it clearly. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. It's not a theory. It's a weapon. He no longer needs the audience. He no longer seeks agreement. He no longer waits to be confirmed. What he thinks, he thinks. What he sees, he sees. What he rejects, stays rejected. The applause means nothing. The silence means nothing. He has exited the market of being liked. This is what it means to see manipulation in its final form. Not cruelty, not violence, but endless suggestion. Be more like this. Say it like that. Don't forget to smile. Try not to sound angry. This was the system. Never demanding. Always nudging. It didn't control him. It persuaded him to adjust himself until there was nothing left to adjust. But now, no more edits. No more filtering. No more softening. The words leave his mouth as they are. Not weaponized. Not diplomatic. Just real. And that's enough to break rooms. Power isn't volume. It isn't charisma. It isn't titles. It's the ability to walk away from anything that demands you lie. Even if it pays. Even if it flatters. Even if it pretends to need you. If it costs your reality, it's already too expensive. He no longer answers questions he doesn't respect. If someone asks him to explain himself, he doesn't. If someone misreads him, he lets them. If someone pokes for reaction, they get none. Because he's done outsourcing truth to consensus. The game was always survival through performance. Be efficient. Be available. Be harmless. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you name it, it loses hold. They told him presence meant being liked. They told him honesty had to be delivered with a smile. They told him to round every sharp edge down for comfort. And for years, he believed them. But now, clarity. Clarity is cold. It doesn't explain. It doesn't wait. It doesn't negotiate. It recognizes that most conversations are traps. That most meetings are loyalty tests. That most compliments are leashes. That most expectations are scripts written by people who fear their own unmasking. He no longer gives them what they want. Not to be rude, but because they don't matter. Not anymore. This is the violence of truth. It doesn't kill people. It kills illusions. And when the illusions die, the room empties. You stop being invited. You stop being promoted. You stop being the safe one. And you realize that was the goal. What's left is not loneliness. It's space. What's left is not rage. It's precision. You don't need to raise your voice. You just stop pretending. And that's louder than anything you could say. This isn't healing. This isn't balance. This isn't some return to peace. This is what's left when the mask is gone and the man is still standing. You said you were free. You said you were building something. But you weren't. You were surviving. Performing. Nodding your way through a life that looked respectable but felt fake. And now the truth is visible. Not abstract. Not symbolic. just brutal and exact. You built your entire identity out of responses. You responded to pressure, to approval, to fear, to reward. You adjusted to stay in the room. You adjusted until there was nothing left to adjust but your spine. You thought you were working for your future, but you were negotiating your absence, piece by piece, smile by smile, silence by silence. Every time you laughed when you wanted to leave. Every time you said sure when you meant no. Every time you stayed late just to be seen. You trained the system how to use you, and it listened. There is no story to explain this. No childhood wound. No philosophical excuse. You were complicit, not in crime, in compromise. You gave up ground before it was even demanded. You rehearsed their language before they corrected you. You stayed predictable to avoid being noticed for who you really are. You thought safety was progress, but safety was the leash. The email you answered at midnight. The meeting where you stayed muted. The boss you thanked for ignoring you. You thought this was normal. It was. That's why it's deadly. Now you see it. All of it. The meetings you sat through while your ideas died in your throat. The conversations where you nodded to lies. The roles you accepted just to be tolerated. You became the man they could count on because you never asked to be counted. This isn't burnout. This isn't fatigue. This is exposure. There's no misunderstanding left. No misplaced trust. No illusion to hold on to. The clarity is total now. You weren't overlooked. You were useful. You weren't rejected. You were absorbed. They didn't break you. They didn't have to. You made yourself compatible and you stayed that way. You know this now. You feel it in every fake smile you can't pull off anymore. In every message you don't want to answer. In every polite word that tastes like acid. You're not confused. You're not numb. You're awake. And that's the problem. Because now, you are responsible for everything you still obey. And if you obey now, it's not training. It's choice. No one is coming to correct this. No one is coming to give you permission. There is only you and the architecture of a lie you helped build. And you can't unknow that. You see the price. You see the pattern. You see the cage. Now carry your name without hiding or stop pretending you ever had one.